Well, hey there, everybody. So today we're going to work on Chapter 4. So we'll start off with the beginning of chapter exercises here. And this one's not going to be too crazy. It's mostly kind of just showing you that you can edit things after the fact. And it kind of breaks it down. You know, it shows off the strategy behind it. We're going to start with this sketch. And the fillet won't be there actually in the original sketch. But, you know, we'll end up adding it in later. So first things first, it shows starting a sketch on XY plane. So let's go ahead and tab between the two here, and we'll start a new part. And now we can start our sketch on XY. Okay, so let's see what's next here. It just has us draw the sketch. I'm going to draw that profile and then I'll come back and dimension it. And I'm going to use this corner as my starting point. So I'm going to tie that into the origin and then draw our rough shape here. So we've got something with a bunch of perpendicular lines, and then it doesn't come down as far. So I'm just going to do that. And then unfortunately I made this part really fat, so that's okay. Just make sure it ends where that line ends. And we'll slap in our dimensions. So we've got 3.25. Bad choice for dimensions. So let's do the overall height. That should scale it. There we go. Okay. So now we can put in that 3.25. And then we have 0.5, 0.5, and 2. And then we have 0.5, 0.75, and 1.75. Now technically, there's no need to have the second value, so I'm going to do a collinear here to avoid that second 1.75 dimension. Let's go ahead and look and see what it has to do next. So it has us do an extrusion 2.5 symmetrically. And I'm just going to hit the extrusion command while in the sketch so that it automatically picks the profile. Type in our value, hit OK. Okay, so next up it has us do a sketch on the bottom face. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then it shows, basically we're going to draw a circle off of this edge, and that's all we'll need. So I'm going to hit project geometry off of this edge, and I just turned it up so you can see a little better, but it's going to be the bottom edge facing away from the other features. So then I'm just going to draw a circle at the midpoint where you see that green dot. I'm going to choose the other end when I see that other green dot, so it's fully constrained. And then it's going to have us do an extrusion. So we're going to do join and 2. So I'm going to click back on this so it pops it back over. So we have join selected and then 2, and what you do is choose a face and it'll extrude to that face. So now it's going to have us rename the parts. So we've got base and circular end. Alright, so next we're going to edit the, well, we're going to first show the dimension visibility for the base sketch. We're going to edit one of the values and then change the extrusion depth. So you right click on base and hit show dimensions. And what this allows you to do is actually edit these values without having to enter the sketch. So we're going to change 3.25 to 3. And then we'll have to hit update to make it show those changes. So hit that little lightning bolt up top. And then our sketch dimensions turn off automatically. So then we're going to change our base extrusion from 2 to 2.0. So all that this is really showing more or less is that you can dynamically update things, which is pretty useful. I mean, when you're actually getting into it. So next we'll do a hole command, and we're going to choose two references to get it concentric to this other circle, and that'll be the bottom face and then the edge down here to get that center point. So we'll choose hole, face, arc, and then just like that, it locates itself. And then actually, yeah, our value is already here, so that's cool. So 0.75. And I think our termination of through all was already on there. It was, so there's no need to hit that in my case, but you probably have to hit through all. So next we're going to draw a sketch on this face, doing a simple rectangle of 1 by 0.75. So I'm going to try to remember that. I'm going to choose project geometry and project this face. We've got our yellow lines. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle somewhat out in space. And I forgot. So 0.75 by 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and slap in this 0.5 value. And then all we need is a collinear constraint for the top line to the yellow top line. We've got our sketch now. And we're going to extrude it using a toNext command. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK, and then we're going to title it Rect Cut. I don't think we missed a name for the hole, but we'll see in a minute. No, so it doesn't have a name. So now it's going to show the ability to edit. So, I can actually go in and change what I do here by double clicking that feature and then choose through all in this case to cut the rest of it. So now, for whatever reason, this happens a lot, you may have to go back in and edit your sketch after the fact. And that's just what we're going to do here. So this is the sketch we had to start with. And we're going to modify it to look like this. And it appears the only difference is actually going to be that little fillet we add in. So I'm going to go back into the sketch and verify no dimensions have changed since I'm not reading every word, but they're good. So now I'm going to do a fillet. And let's see, that fillet size is 0.25. So let's just go ahead and change that, slap these little clicks in, and there we go. So now I'm going to hit finish sketch, and it's going to update and had that in already. So it's pretty straightforward. And the last thing we're going to do is change the material to be cast iron. So I'm going to put it in my ISO view, and you can either choose it from this drop down, or you can actually go into the material browser and select it. But I'm just going to go to iron cast since I know exactly where it's at. And yeah, that'll be it. You would just save it right there. So now we can jump over to these end of chapter exercises, and these are, a little harder, but shouldn't take too long still. So I'm going to start a sketch on the front plane, and I'm going to draw roughly the shape of how it looks. And I think I'll use this bottom point right here as my starting point. So I'm going to do a horizontal line, slant it up, and I'm always a big fan of drawing it proportionally similar but get the dimensions in later, so we'll just kind of draw as we go. Okay, so I've got a slant and then it goes straight up. I'm assuming it's symmetrical, so I'm just going to draw the same thing that I see over here. So far so good. Now, unfortunately, I drew it a little bit out of place. That's okay. I'll just constrain it in after. But you have to really be careful with this one because it's trying to imply a lot of constraints. And when you're doing this, you don't want it to make assumptions about the wrong things being parallel to each other. So this is the only one where really implied constraints or inferred constraints can really mess you up. So I'm just going to put a coincident right there for the endpoint and then start putting in these values. Let's try to do the overall height first and see if that scales it for us. You always want to make sure you get that scaling in first things first in case you didn't draw it too close in proportion to what it actually is, and I tend to not. So we have a width and a height of this chamfer. It's 0.25. Same here. this one's going to have the same width. Technically, I could set these to equal each other, or I could just do like I'm doing here, which is dimensioning it and then choosing the corresponding constraints that match. So, you know, basically if I were to go and edit this one, it's going to change this guy up here as well. So by doing this, all I'm doing is I click on a value and it pulls it. So nothing crazy. Okay, so then we've got 0.125 tall, angle of 45, which is implied already. Sometimes it's going to happen where, you know, it has inferred some constraints and you just didn't notice. So same height here. We've got 1.25 from the end, 1.5 overall width. Point 0.5. We've got 0.2, and basically all I'm doing is just going through and checking off all my values, making sure I put them in. So nothing crazy. You know, you don't have to necessarily watch every single thing I'm doing here. As long as you're getting in all the values that you can, you should be good to go. So we've got 0.375 here. Now sometimes if you do have some inferred constraints that have happened, you may not be able to get some of the values in, but you can tell that you need them. And in that case, you may have to delete some lines to get the other constraints in, or whatever. You know, sometimes you may not know how to edit the constraints you're having issues with, but you need them still. It's kind of random, but we got the 45-degree option here, so I'll take it. And then, you know, I could get a little tricky here. I think I'm gonna do something basic. I'm just gonna set this line to equal this line. And I'm going to set this line to equal this one. Now you may ask, how did he know this? Well, if I were to undo it and I were to grab this line or the point, I can see that it's just adjusting in width, and it's clearly because this line doesn't have a value. So I just need to say that these two match. And we're going to extrude at 0.25. So I'll go ahead and turn on that feature, do a symmetric, 0.25. There's the first one. And then the tube mount's going to be inches as well, so I'll go ahead and get it started. Now this is a good time to talk about view positions. So I'm going to draw this L-shaped profile. That's going to be the first thing that I draw in my sketch. But we don't want that to be the front view. We want this direction to be front view. We want to be looking through that hole with this portion in front. So that means I'm going to want to draw on the right side to start with, so that we have the part in a proper position. Right now it doesn't seem to matter, but it's going to be very crucial to know what view is the front view and what is the side and top and so on. And you want it to be oriented correctly. It'll save you a lot of time down the road. So we're just going to go ahead and try to keep to that system throughout. So we've got roughly something like this. Maybe a little short, but it should be fine. Oops, bad click. Wow, okay, so it's going to grow a lot. And it's the same width over here. We've got a thickness here of 1.25 and a height of 1.75, I think that says. Let me zoom in a little bit. Ooh, it's still hard to tell. Kind of looks like it could be a 3 too. Let me just get in here a little closer. This is where the perk of having an ebook helps. Okay, so it looks like a 7, kind of a really, really poorly made 7. Let's just put everything in place and see if that fits right. So it's 0.375 down right here, and we're missing a width of this top portion. Okay, so it's 3 from here to here. So let's go ahead and extrude it, and we'll just see if that looks right. I think that this is probably the right value, but it's hard to tell until we get into 3D. So we're going to do symmetric 5. And let's draw this little rectangular cutout here off of this face. Same deal, make sure you're projecting that geometry so that you have something to tie this into. And the rectangle is going to be 2.5 by or 0.375. And it is centered. So in this case, to me, what I would prefer to do, it's like one of the only times you could really say it's worth doing, but we can tie these center points in together. So I'm going to do a vertical constraint for those center points, and then the collinear, and we can extrude it. Here's a good time for 2 next. And let's do the same thing on the bottom. I could have actually done it all in one feature. Well, no, I couldn't have. This one's going to be through all, so, and it's going to be 3 by 0.125. All right, project this bottom edge. Do a collinear, and it's centered again. So we're going to do a vertical constraint from the midpoint of this line to that little midpoint of our projected line. Do an extrude cut through all. And yeah, I think that height was correct earlier. So we're going to roll with it. It appears to be a 7. I mean, you know, it's not easy to see there, but you get the point. Okay, so we'll do a hole. And it is centered and 2 down. So I'm just going to grab a dimension so it projects that edge for me. And then we'll just do a vertical constraint to line this up. Give it a value of 2. Extrude it. And the only thing we're missing now is some fillets of 0.5. Oh, and I missed one right here. So let's go ahead and edit that feature back. Click that edge. And it looks like that's going to be it. But you know, I'm not very happy with this height. Let me go back and check that. See if it would look better with 1.35. No. Okay, so it is 1.75. It's just hard to tell. It's always good to go back and fact check, you know. Okay, so yep, let's move on to the next one. Let's zoom this back out too. Okay, so up next is a hanger jaw, and we're going to draw with this being the front view. So actually that's going to be the sketch we start on. Okay, so looking at this, I'm going to draw everything in the side view except for this top little portion if I can avoid it. I may not be able to, in which case we'll just draw like the zigzag, and we'll add in the arc and the cut later. So let's go ahead and start it. First of all, I kind of want to use this circle as our starting point, like as for what's going to be in the origin. So I'm just going to slap in a little circle. And you know, I don't tend to connect the geometry till later, and that's fine. So for now, we're just going to kind of ballpark this doodle here. And actually, this line should be connected. So I'm already kind of off base here. Let me just pull this straight up. And then we're going to do that little step down I already said I didn't want to do. And then from there, we're going to have this bit and a little landing. What we need to have here is a little line. So let's connect it a little bit, make this a little more clear what's going on. And I did miss the fillet up here. That was actually by choice. I'm just trying to tidy up where I can to start with. So I'm going to trim everything into place and give it that rough shape. I know it's not perfect. And then let's give it the overall height so we can start forming this to what we want it to be. Whoop, bad click. Trying to put in that 4.75 height. Okay. First things first, let's put in this value here of 1.25. Let's put in the overall width here. Well, actually, so we'll put in these two. So we got 2.75, I'll grow a lot. And 0.75. And we have 0.5 here. And here as well. And then it's 2 to here. Oop, put something wrong. Alright, so I was trying to avoid putting in the fillet earlier, but we're going to have to put it in the sketch, so that's okay. We're going to put this width first at 4.5. And then the fillet size itself is 0.5. Whoop, I clicked something wrong. Okay, so this flat portion left over is going to be sized at 0.25. We have a height for this line at 3. And just like that, it's fully constrained. You know, sometimes it comes together quicker than you'd think, but usually just filling in the values is enough to get her in place, as long as you're drawing with your inferred constraints in the right place. So we're going to do a 3 width. And then first things first, let's go ahead and put in our little arc here on this top face. So I'm going to project this edge, and I'm going to draw a circle, making sure I snap to that green mark on both ends. And I'll go ahead and extrude it. 2 next. Then I'm going to turn on the hole command, choose this face and this edge, and let's see what the size is. 1.5. Okay, so yeah, I don't know, it seems a little long to me. Let me just double check that. So I'm going to measure 2.75 and then 0.75 to here. Yeah, okay. Looks fine to me. Okay, so next up is a transfer fork, and this one we're going to apply a material when we're done. So I'm going to start off with drawing this face here, and then we'll kind of cut away at it a little bit. So and I'm going to draw roughly what it looks like. See how it's trying to imply all these perpendiculars and angles to this? Just try to avoid the dotted lines if you're having issues. You can also just quit out of the sketch, and that helps too. So now I'm going to draw that circle, and the circle is actually going to be what's the center that I use. So let's go ahead and do some constraints here. Oop, wrong spot. I've had a lot of coffee, so I'm a little jittery. Alright, so we've got 3.5 in height here, I believe, but let's just start over here just in case these are not symmetric. So we've got a radius of 1 and 0.75. Oh my, scaled a lot. Thank goodness that worked. Okay, so we have 0.75. It's easier just to go ahead and set this line to equal this one, so that you don't have to do a collinear here later. We have 1.5. And again, set this side to equal this side. You know, the part's symmetric, so you don't have to have 2 sets of dimensions for everything. And it's 1.25 from this edge to that hole and from the cut to the hole. So from that, I'm going to actually draw, you know what, no, I'm going to actually just draw like this block portion here. So I'm going to actually just put this as 1.25. And then because we know that the line is in line with this point, I'm going to do a coincident for the line to the point, and then a horizontal constraint for this line point to this line point. I'm going to go ahead and make the thickness here 1.75 overall. And I believe it was 0.75, yeah, between them. So now I'm going to say that this line equals this one so that it evens out. We've got an overall width down here of 3.5. And the bottom width is 0.75. So let's see, we're missing an overall height of 3.5. And that might be it, actually. It is, okay. Whoa, what happened here? You know what? We don't need it. That's the problem. Okay, so in a case like this, if it jumps, you just need to say that these two lines equal each other, and it should jump in place. But just to be safe, I'm going to measure that 3.5. That's wrong. Okay, interesting. Let's see, so if it's 2.25 down, maybe I put something in wrong. So we got 1.25 from top to edge, 1.5 here. I bet you what we have is an implied constraint. Yep, that's exactly it. See, this is what I always worry about. So it has actually implied a constraint on its own. So if this happened to you, hit this, turn it on, and delete a perpendicular if present. It actually made this line and this line perpendicular to each other. So now we should be able to put in that 3.5 and have no issues. So that's a niche problem, but that's exactly what I was talking about. We really have to watch the inferred constraints sometimes. They can get you. So we'll extrude at 5, symmetric. All right. I'm going to immediately try to knock out some easy stuff here. And this is going to be the fun part because if you guys didn't draw this on the same planes and directions as me, it's going to be a lot harder for you. So I'm going to start with drawing a gigantic rectangle here, and I'm going to hit Slice Graphics, cut our part in half. So this rectangle that I'm drawing is to cut this out. So it's aligned to this edge here. Now it's kind of hard to tell what's going on here, so I'm just going to turn the part so you can kind of see what I'm doing. But it cuts on this angle. So I'm going to just project this edge, and yeah, it's 0.75 here, so I assume it's the same here. So 1.5 minus that, it's a 3.5 rectangle. So I'm going to give it a width. I'm going to project this bottom edge, and I'm going to do a vertical constraint locating this. Actually, I think this is one of those times where I watch when I choose the point. It's hard to see, but do you see over here a little bit? It's actually showing horizontal lines. This is one of those times where, in my case, Inventor is being a jerk and putting it backwards. So in this case, I'm going to choose horizontal in order to go vertical and align this. Then I'm going to do collinear and a collinear down here. And there we go. It's sized up, so I can just do an extrude through both ways. All right, so now it's starting to kind of look like something. So let's see, we're going to need a rectangle up here as well. We can go ahead and do it. And it's going to be 1 wide here and 1 here. So this is a rectangle of 3. Same concept, project your edge. Do a, hopefully, yeah, so this time it actually is vertical. I'm telling you, I don't know why Inventor has never gotten better about that, but this is a recurring issue. I just need to give it a height of 0.5. And then we can cut it. All right, so now it kind of looks like it. And we can draw in our circle. Now this part, this is where I was referencing if you didn't draw it the same way, you're going to be in a little more trouble. So I'm going to draw, get my green points, make sure everything's fully constrained. I'm going to extrude it. when I do 2 next, it doesn't want to pick it up. So that's fine. I'll just do 2 and click the face manually. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a hole. Choose the face and the edge. And then scale it down because it's gigantic. It's going to be 0.5. Not through all. We want it to do 2 in this space. So here was the fun part. If you didn't draw this part with this sketch in the middle, now you can't do this next trick. You'll have to do the same thing on the other side or make your own plane in order to get this located. But all I'm going to do now is a mirror. And I'm going to choose this feature and this feature, click on mirror plane, and choose our point that cuts through the middle here. And it's going to duplicate that feature over here. It's pretty cool, you know. But if you didn't do that, you may have issues. So one trick you could do is do a mid-plane between 2 planes and choose, you know, 2 corresponding parts on one side. And that'll give you the plane to use. But obviously, it's advised to draw your sketch where I did to start with. So anyway, it looks like that's pretty much it. Only thing we have left to do is put iron cast on. And then, you know, if you're feeling a little uneasy, I always kind of feel weird about these parts because they're so intricate. I'm just going to measure it. So we've got 0.5 here, 1.25 there. Yeah, I mean, it looks good. Okay. So, you know, that's pretty much it for that one. So up next is the guide slider. We're kind of past the harder ones now. So, and we're going to draw this as our front view, and it's also going to have a material. So first and foremost, let's draw that shape. And I am going to use that circle as the middle, so we'll start with that. But it's not a perfect circle. We're cutting off part of it as we go. So let's go ahead and put that portion in. And don't assume that those are in line. Just draw a random offset of that. And that's okay. That one ended up going crooked, but I will fix that later. Okay, so put in a perpendicular. And then I always think it's better to trim these before you go trying to, you know, dimension the sketch and make it scale. But I'm going to put the circle in. Might as well have it in place, but I don't know that it's going to be concentric to this other circle. So I'm just going to draw it out here in space. So first things first, this width is 4. That may not scale it, so let's do 3. I think these 2 circles are concentric though, the more I look at it. So I am going to do it. Put a concentric constraint on them. If it ends up not working, we'll delete it and play with it in a minute. So it's 2.5 to the middle. It's 4 right here. Oop, I hit a button. That's okay. If yours, like mine, moves out of the way, just kind of shift things over a little bit. 1.5 tall. .25. 0.5. And then we're going to set some lines that equal other ones. So this line equals this one. This one equals that one. And let's see, diameter 4.25. Now it sucks that it does this because technically that should be a radius value. So it's going to give you a radius value to start with. So we're going to change that to diameter by right-clicking and choosing dimension type and choosing diameter. Anytime you have a partial circle, it's always going to start with a radius as its dimension type. So now I'm going to set this to equal this, and that'll center it up. And then our other circle is 2.5. Okay. It does appear that it was concentric. So I can go ahead and extrude it. 1.75. Symmetric. Make it cast iron. And there you go. It's not too shabby, actually. All right, so the last one we have here is shaft guide. Now, I will point out one thing from my experience. Common issues people have, they don't extrude this halfway. If you look, there's no hole present here. You'd be able to see a little bit of it. So this hole is not through all. The other thing to note, some people draw a rectangle and then they do like a line, making it tangent here, and then they fillet it. That also does not look like this. So I'm going to draw this part how it should be. I'm going to do top view, and of course, Inventor's going to rotate it probably. So keep an eye out for that. There's always some kind of quirk. All right, so I'm going to do one feature for this and then a separate feature for this, so I don't have to share the sketch. So we've got 0.75 and 0.75. The bigger one's really 1.5 because it's giving you a radius value here. So you could also change it to a radius dimension if you want. It's up to you. I'm going to do an extrusion of 1. And in this case, I'm actually going to just do this direction. So now I'm going to choose to extrude off of this top face a rectangle. So I'm just going to draw a generic rectangle here, give it its value of 1.75. And 0.6. We can go ahead and put our circle here too. And it's going to be centered. And 0.4 off the edge. 0.25 in size. So now I'm going to go in, project this geometry. I'm going to slap in a tangent for this part. I'm actually going to delete this line entirely. And then I'll go ahead and trim this line. So now I just need to extend this line to touch that one. This is one of those fun times where it sometimes make you delete constraints, but I guess I could have done this probably. Let's see, that might have worked. So instead of trying to extend it, I'll just do a coincident from this line to the circle. There we go. Okay. I could put the fillets here, but I have a strong stance of you know, putting them in as a feature later. It's a lot easier to change. So we'll go ahead and finish, extrude, and what's our size? 0.25. I'm going to go to the same direction, and then we have that hole. So the perk of doing, you know, the circle in the middle earlier is we can just do a sketch, you know, right here, and we'll have a nice like projected point to do our circle. And it's going to be 0.25, and it's going to be located 0.5 from the bottom. So now all we got to do is vertically align the center point to the center of the circle and do an extrude cut the other way. And then we need fillets of 0.125. And it defaulted to that. Yep. Okay. Now, just for the record, in case people were curious, I'll show you the difference if it was through all both ways. You would see that hole. So there's your proof, in case anybody's wondering. All right, so let's change it to aluminum 6061. Yep, and that's going to be it. All right, thanks for watching, everybody.